Xenoblade Chronicles dramatically changed my view of the Nintendo Switch. I'm not sure what your first exposure to Xenoblade was. Maybe you came from the old PS2 days, maybe you had the Nintendo Wii, but my first exposure was watching this guy playing the definitive edition way back in 2021.
Your surprise is understandable.
She's got a butt head.
My first impression was mixed. In fact, the first thing that I remember seeing was this cutscene where Shulk and Reiner introduced a Juju for the first time. The biggest throw-off to me at the time was the accents. I did not expect thick British accents to come from these characters. And then the cutscene ends, and I hear it. This music, combined with this gorgeously detailed open area of the Gawa Plains, was the exact moment I did a double take and said, wait, this is a Nintendo Switch game? To give you a little history on myself, my gaming experiences came mostly from the Xbox. I did own some Nintendo consoles like the GameCube and the Game Boy Advance, but they were mostly used to play Sonic and very little else. I was not, and still am not, familiar with most of Nintendo's bangers. In fact, I had a very elitist view of the Nintendo Switch. I looked down on it and wrote it off as a toy, the kind of thing that you would give to a child, but not a serious gamer. So imagine my surprise when I see an area like this in something that I had totally written off. It wasn't long after this exposure that I picked up a copy of the game and began my own journey. At some point, I started streaming my playthrough in the DB Geek Discord to a few people from the community. It was an interesting experience getting to learn things about the game I would have normally looked over or not known. Since I had seen most of the game through other people streaming, spoilers weren't a huge concern to me, and though it did understandably lessen the impact of some otherwise intense scenes, it didn't stop those moments from hurling an emotional gut punch as the voice actors, animators, and composers set the tone of each scene perfectly. It's hard to explain. It's the kind of sensation that you can only feel if you let yourself get really invested in a game. As the story progresses and you unlock new and more exciting areas to explore, my mind was constantly blown. Some of my favorite areas in the game are easily the Bionis Leg, Machna Forest, Erith Sea, Fallen Arm, and Mechonis Field. The art direction in these areas is just on point. The other areas are good too, but these are the places that really stood out to me. By the time I reached the end of the game, I had already bought Xenoblade Chronicles 2 in anticipation. I didn't quite get the hang of the Future Connected DLC, but I hope to play it again properly when I give Xenoblade Chronicles another shot with the Japanese voices this time around. From there, I went to Xenoblade Chronicles 2, foolishly and ignorantly expecting it to pick up exactly where the first game left off. But no. New characters, new locations, and a whole new vibe that seems to be the cause of a lot of debate online. If you're a fan of these games, you probably know what I'm talking about, but for those of you who don't, Chronicles 2 borrows a lot of anime tropes. This is going to sound really rich coming from the guy who dismissed the console that these games released on, but if you're one of those people that will ignore this entire franchise because one of the games makes a few weird boob jokes, then shame on you. You really are robbing yourself of a fantastic experience because of a few light-hearted comedic moments in an otherwise really intense story. I completely understand how it could be seen as off-putting, but at least give it a try. Plus, if you don't try the game, how are you going to get to meet all these gacha blade characters? Shout out to all these epic blades. Thank you for being wonderful characters.
Not you!
Chronicles 2 is a tonally different game to the first, but the core spirit is the same in my opinion. Characters coming together to stop an overwhelming force that has no business being as fleshed out as it is. This guy right here, he's a riot.
Indeed!
The Torna DLC, which I did play this time, was a combination of moments best described as, well, that's heartbreaking. Oh, hey, I remember that. And finally, I hate every single person in this village. I do want to say that I had a blast with Torna's gameplay style as well. Don't ask me why I struggled so much understanding the core gameplay of Chronicles 2, but I did. Maybe it had something to do with the tutorials over-explaining everything. After Xenoblade Chronicles 3 released, and I failed to obtain a copy of the Collector's Edition, seriously, Nintendo, I hate your store. Please restock this goddamn thing. I've been waiting for ages, and I really don't want to have to spend £100 for a box on eBay. In my opinion, the story felt like a perfect combination of drama and humor from the first and second games, which is ironic if you're in the know. It had to be intentional. The story is once again masterfully crafted with surprises around every corner and visually the most amazing looking Chronicles game to date. Slight spoiler here, but I am a massive fan of going back to locations from older games and seeing them in different conditions after some time has passed. And after seeing the cover art for this game alone, I had really hoped that we were returning to my absolute favorite location in Chronicles 2, Fonza Mima, only to be greeted with, well, put it this way, I was very, very sad. There's still plenty of less obvious places and references scattered throughout the game that keen-eyed fans will be rewarded with, but it's not as if they're just reusing the locations. These areas are dramatically different. Simply put, Chronicles 3 was one of the best gaming experiences that I had in 2022. Eventually, the Future Redeemed DLC dropped and acted as an epilogue of sorts to the trilogy. The most that I can say about this DLC without spoilers is that it hit all the right spots and was a beautiful and intense conclusion to the story. I do wish that some things had been a tiny bit different. I'd hoped certain people and characters would have been involved, but I'm still happy with what we got in the end. But the fact that each of these games tend to, for the most part, run excellently on the Switch is a credit to both Nintendo and Monolith Soft. Thinking of my own gaming habits for the last few years, the Switch is easily the console I've invested most of my time with. I consider myself very fortunate to own a Series X, a PS5, and a Switch. In my opinion, the console that promised and delivered the most is hands down the Nintendo Switch. No shade thrown at Xbox or PlayStation, but their lineups have been so dry by comparison for me. So much in my life has come from watching these randomly British characters try to rescue an annoying British kid from equally British robots. I'm fully invested in what Nintendo has to offer now. I'm checking out directs. I started collecting sealed games for the Switch because physical media forever. Even bought a sealed up copy of Chronicles X despite never ever wanting to play that game ever, and I've also double dipped on the Switch so that I could play Mario Kart with my friends and family. All because I found so much enjoyment from one franchise that I nearly wrote off because it was a toy console for babies. So I guess in a way that's my advice for anybody out there listening to this now. Don't be an elitist snob when it comes to games. Games are for everyone. If you don't like what you're playing, at least you gave it a try and figured it out for yourself. There's games on the Switch that I've given a try and didn't like, but for every game that I didn't like, there were at least 3 that I did. And some of those games didn't originate on the Switch. Xenoblade came from the Wii. A game that I'm currently playing called Blood Rain Revamped came from consoles like the original Xbox and PS2. Side note, they should release more PS2 and Xbox games on the Switch. It's like the perfect modern console for it. Only time will tell what the next Nintendo console has in store for us, or what Monolith Soft plans to do with Xenoblade going forward, but it's safe to say that I'm here for it. I'm locked in and I'm ready for more. Until next time. Okay. Nobody knows this, but the entire time I was recording that, I had a big thick blanket over my head. I am sweating cobs. Oh my god, my face is dripping. I could barely breathe for 30 minutes.